The afternoon I watched Celeste Harding sign the paperwork that closed 3 urgent care clinics. I was up in the ceiling of building 4 trying to locate a refrigerant leak nobody else had bothered to track down. The conference room below had glass on 2 sides. I could see everything through the vent housing I'd partially removed. Celeste stood at the head of the table in a charcoal blazer, her hair dark and pulled straight back, a pen moving across a signature line without hesitation. Around her sat the kind of people who refer to neighborhoods as underserved markets and mean it as a neutral term. They had folders. They had charts with colored circles. They had a vice president of strategic operations who kept nodding before Celeste finished her sentences. I had seen enough to know what those folders meant. The Ridgemont Urgent Care Clinic was on my street. My daughter Ada had gotten her flu shot there 6 weeks ago. My late wife Eloise had gone there when she first started feeling wrong, before anyone understood how wrong it was going to get. I went back to finding the leak. My name is Silas Rowe. I've worked HVAC at St. Carver Regional Medical Center and its satellite buildings for 9 years. I fix what breaks and I flag what's about to break. Those are different jobs, and most people in administration prefer the first one. Celeste knew my name because of what happened the previous February. The hospital's south wing had a refrigerant issue that the facilities manager wanted to write off as sensor drift. I wrote it up, got told to close the ticket. I wrote it up again with pressure logs and a temperature map and a note about what a slow refrigerant bleed does to an enclosed mechanical room over time. That note went up the chain until it landed somewhere it apparently mattered. 2 days later, Celeste Harding walked into the south mechanical room in heels that clicked wrong on the concrete and asked me to explain what I'd found. She was not pretending to understand. She asked 3 questions, listened to all 3 answers, and approved the full repair that afternoon. She also told facilities management that the next time someone buried a systems issue for budget optics, they'd explain it to her personally. After that, she said my name when she passed me in the hallway. Not Mainton, not a nod. She said Silas kept walking and left me standing there trying to figure out what to do with that. That was 9 months before the afternoon I watched her sign those papers. I went home and told myself it wasn't personal. It was never personal when you were the one holding the pen. I was home in Farragut by 6:30. Ada was at the kitchen table doing something that involved crayons, dried pasta, and a cardboard tube that had once held paper towels. I didn't ask what it was. She always had an answer that took 15 minutes. "Did you eat?" I said. Mrs. Pruitt gave me soup and a biscuit. The biscuit from the tin. She made them. I looked at my daughter. "Real biscuits?" She said she always makes them on Tuesdays because Tuesdays need help. I couldn't argue with that. I reheated the leftover soup and ate standing at the counter while Ada explained, at length, that her cardboard creation was a rocket ship for her stuffed armadillo, whose name was Hector, and who had previously been to the moon but was now training for a mission to the sun. "The sun is on fire," I said. "Hector is fireproof." "How'd that happen?" She gave me the look that said the answer should be obvious. "He went through training." Outside, the sky had gone the color of old bruises. We were 2 days out from the edge of a tropical system that had come ashore near Mobile and was pulling itself apart slowly, dragging moisture up through Tennessee in the kind of slow, saturating rain that doesn't look dramatic until the creek behind the gas station on Route 62 starts talking back. I had been watching flood alerts since noon. By 9 that night, they'd upgraded the watch to a warning for 2 counties. I told Ada it was bedtime. She negotiated for 1 more chapter of the book we were reading. I gave her half a chapter. She fell asleep before I turned the page. I was loading the dishwasher when my phone rang with a number I half recognized. It had called me once before, from the executive suite's main line. I answered. "This is Silas." A pause, rain against the window. "Mr. Rowe." Celeste Harding's voice was exactly what it was in conference rooms, measured, nothing extra. "I apologize for the hour." People like Celeste Harding did not apologize for things, unless the situation was already past the point where apologizing helped. "My car stalled," she said. "I'm on the Route 62 bypass near the Ridgemont off-ramp. There's water across the road. I couldn't see the depth. I tried to go through." I was already moving toward the mudroom. "How high is it around the car right now?" "It was at the door seams when I last checked. It may be rising." "Don't open the door. Don't try to start it again. If it comes up past the window, roll it down before it reaches the top of the glass and climb out." "What are you driving?" "A Genesis sedan, black." "I know that stretch. I'll be there in 15. Another pause. "You remember the geography from our building work?" No, I just know where that off-ramp is. Stay on the line if you can. I called Mrs. Pruitt next. She answered on the second ring and came over in rain boots and a cardigan like she kept them staged by the door for exactly this kind of night. I kissed Ada's hair, told her I'd be back soon, and took the truck. The roads were bad the way Tennessee flood roads get bad. Not dramatic, just unforgiving. You'd be fine for half a mile and then headlights would catch a sheet of water sitting across the lane like it owned the place and had paperwork to prove it. I went slow. I knew which roads fed back if 62 was gone. I found Celeste's car on the shoulder of the bypass, sitting in 8 inches of moving water with its hazard cycling weakly. The rain was coming sideways. I pulled in front, left my lights on, and sloshed back to the Genesis with my hood cinched down. Celeste had the window down 2 inches. She was watching me come. "Can you push the door?" I asked. "The water pressure." "I know, I'll pull from out here. Count of 3, push hard." It took 2 tries. When it finally opened, she stepped out into calf-high current and didn't make a sound about it. Her shoes were not designed for any of this. Her suit jacket was soaked through one shoulder from where the window had let rain in. She carried a leather bag over one arm like she was transferring between flights, not waiting out of a flooded car on a county bypass at 9:40 at night. I got her into the passenger seat of my truck and cranked the heat. She held her hands near the vent the way someone does when they've been cold, long enough to lose track of it. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet. The 62 connector toward downtown is closed. I'm not getting you to a hotel tonight." She looked out the windshield at the dark water moving across the road. "My house is 20 minutes, I said. "It has heat and my daughter and a neighbor who's already there if you'd rather." "Your house is fine," she said. She said it the way someone says something they've decided is operationally correct. Not warm, not cold. Just a conclusion she'd arrived at and wasn't going to revisit. The drive took closer to 40. She made 2 phone calls, both short. One to reschedule something for morning. One to a man named Doug, telling him the board packet on clinic transition timelines needed to be held until she could review the community impact language. Her voice stayed exactly what it was in every context. A steady, controlled instrument. When I turned into the driveway, the porch light was still on. Ada's drawings were taped in the front window. A pair of rubber boots I'd left by the step were waterlogged and starting to float off the mat. Inside, the house smelled like biscuit and crayon wax, and the particular smell of a place where a child has been active all day. Mrs. Pruitt rose from the couch. Ada was asleep on it under a quilt, one sock off, Hector the armadillo tucked under her chin. Celeste came in behind me and stopped just past the door. I watched her take in the room, the rain boots in a pile by the mat, the drawings on the fridge held up with magnets from various state parks we'd visited, the crayon rocket ship on the table still mid-construction, the quilt that Eloise's mother had made, and the general evidence of a life assembled one ordinary day at a time. For someone who ran a company with 1,200 employees and 4 hospital campuses, Celeste Harding looked genuinely uncertain about where to stand. "Sorry about the mess," I said, "because that's what people say." "It isn't messy," she said. That wasn't true. I let it go. Mrs. Pruitt looked at Celeste the way neighbors do when something unusual walks through your front door. "This is Miss Harding," I said. "She got stuck on 62. "In this rain, everybody belongs inside," Mrs. Pruitt said. She put on her rain jacket, told me the power had flickered twice around 8, and stepped back out into the storm like she'd been born weatherproof. I showed Celeste the hook where she could hang her coat. She looked at it. Ada's purple rain slicker on one peg, my old canvas work jacket on another, and carefully draped her own coat over the back of a kitchen chair instead. "You hungry?" I asked. "No, thank you." "You cold?" "I'm fine." Those are different answers to different questions. She gave me a look I recognized from the South Mechanical Room, the one that meant she'd registered what I said, and was deciding whether it was useful. I could eat something small. I put a pan on the stove. There was leftover chicken and rice from Sunday and cornbread. I'd made Thursday that was still good if you weren't being particular. I set a plate in front of her. She looked at it like someone who had forgotten that food existed in this form. Ada woke up the way she always did, not gradually but all at once, both eyes open, sitting straight up, fully present. She looked at me, then she looked at Celeste. "Daddy, there's a lady." "I know." "Is she lost?" "She got stuck in the rain. This is Celeste." Ada studied her with the unself-conscious directness that only small children and certain kinds of judges can get away with. "Do you have kids?" "No," Celeste said. "A dog?" "No." A cat? No. What about fish? No. Ada's face arranged itself into genuine concern. What do you have? Celeste was quiet for a moment. Meetings, mostly. Ada turned to me. That's not a pet, Daddy. I know. You can't pet a meeting. That's true. Celeste's expression shifted, not to a smile exactly, but to something adjacent, something that hadn't been there before. Ada climbed into the chair beside her and began inspecting the cornbread with a level of seriousness that suggested it needed to pass some internal standard. She asked Celeste 3 more questions. Did she like armadillos? Had she ever been on a rocket ship? And was she a real grown-up or a pretend one? Before I got her turned back towards sleep with the promise of a story. The story was one I'd invented 3 months ago about a very small owl who wanted to work at a library, but kept accidentally checking out the wrong books. Ada corrected me every time I got a detail wrong. She was asleep before the owl solved anything. When I came back to the kitchen, Celeste was standing at the sink, her sleeves rolled up, rinsing her plate. You don't have to, I said. I can rinse a plate. I handed her the dish soap. She washed. I dried. Outside, the rain had gone from loud to relentless, the kind that doesn't announce itself anymore, just continues. You made the call to close the Ridgemont clinic, I said. I wasn't trying to be careful about it. She didn't stop washing. That was one of 3 closures approved today, yes. My wife went to Ridgemont before we knew what was wrong with her. The water kept running. I'm sorry to hear that, she said, and she meant it, not the performed kind of sorry, but the short, real kind that doesn't try to fill space. Eloise, I said. 2 years ago now, I looked at the dark window. When something's wrong and it's 11 at night and you don't have the kind of insurance that makes the ear feel like a safe option, Ridgemont is what's there. It's what a lot of people on that side of the county have. Celeste was quiet. The spreadsheet probably calls it low-volume utilization, I said. It does. I've seen what happens when you patch a system instead of maintaining it, I said. Looks fine on paper. Then the coldest night of the year comes and you're dealing with a failure that costs 3 times what the repair would have. She turned off the water, dried her hands on the dish towel I offered, looked at me the way she'd looked at me in the mechanical room. Measuring, not dismissive. People are not HVAC systems, she said. No, they break quieter and they don't usually send an alert. She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. Right in the comments, was I out of line saying that to her? She was still my CEO. She was also standing in my kitchen drying her hands on a towel with ducks on it. Sometimes the context makes the conversation. The power went out at 11:14. Everything cut at once. Lights, refrigerator hum. The ceiling fan Ada always wanted running even in September. Ada called for me from the bedroom. Stay there, I called back. I'm coming. Celeste stayed still in the kitchen dark while I found the lantern in the mudroom, the candles in the second drawer, and the battery radio that had been my father's. By the time I had light going, Celeste had moved to the doorway, watching without getting in the way. Ada appeared at the edge of the hall in her pajamas, Hector under one arm, blinking against the lantern light. Daddy, the house stopped. I know, Bug, it'll come back. What if it doesn't? Celeste crouched down to Ada's level in the hall. It was a careful motion, like she wasn't sure the floor would behave. The house is still here, she said. It's just quieter right now. Ada looked at her. Is quiet bad? Not always. Ada considered this and apparently accepted it, because she leaned into my side and said she wanted the rest of the owl story. We ended up in the living room. Ada on the couch between me and Celeste, the lantern on the coffee table, the battery radio playing something low from an oldies station out of Knoxville. Ada decided Celeste needed to hold Hector while I found the page I'd stopped on. Celeste held the stuffed armadillo with both hands like it might require formal documentation. You can relax, I said. He doesn't bite. He looks like he might. Hector is a pacifist, Ada said. He only bites bad ideas. That's a useful skill, Celeste said. I finished the owl story wrong on purpose, giving the owl a job at the wrong library and a best friend who was a very opinionated encyclopedia. Ada corrected me 6 times, then 7, then her voice started slowing, the corrections getting softer, until they stopped altogether, and she was asleep with her head against Celeste's arm. Celeste went completely still. You can breathe, I said. I am. Not a lot. She looked down at Ada with an expression I couldn't fully read in the candlelight. Something careful. Something undefended. She trusts easily, Celeste said. She's selective, she took to you fast. Why? I don't know. I picked up Hector from where he'd slid off the cushion. Some people just register as safe. That landed somewhere. I could see it. Celeste looked at Ada for a moment longer, then turned her head toward the wall of framed photos. There was a photo of Eloise on the shelf near the window. One from before, when she was fine and we'd taken Ada to Cade's Cove and she'd laughed at something off camera and I'd caught it without trying. It was the most her picture I had. Celeste saw it. She didn't ask right away. Later, after I'd carried Ada to bed, I made coffee on the propane camp stove, and we sat at the kitchen table in the candlelight, with mugs between our hands and the rain easing finally to something you could talk over. Your wife? She asked. Eloise, 2 years. I looked at the dark glass of the window. Ovarian cancer, it moved fast. One winter she was here and laughing, and the next one it was just me and Ada trying to figure out how to get through a Tuesday. Celeste turned the mug slowly in her hands. I'm sorry. I built routines after. Same breakfast, same school drop-off, same everything. It helped Ada. I think it kept me from falling apart too long in any one direction. I looked at her. You learn how to run things tight when there's no one else to run them. I understand that. Do you? She was quiet for a moment. My father lost his business when I was 14, a printing company. He'd borrowed to expand and the market moved and the bank moved faster. I came home one day and my mother was crying at the kitchen table over a letter. She set the mug down. I decided then that I was going to understand money before it could do that to me again. And, did you? I understand it very well. She looked at the candle flame. What I'm less sure about is what I missed while I was learning. Outside, a branch came down somewhere in the yard. Neither of us moved. The Ridgemont Clinic, I said. And the 2 others. How many of those neighborhoods have anything else within 20 minutes? 1, the other 2 are primary access points. Then you know what closing them actually means. Yes. Not as a metric, what it means. She looked at me across the table. Garner wants an additional 8% cut on top of what was approved today. He'll table it Thursday. What's your position? My position is that I am having this conversation at your kitchen table at midnight during a flood. Because my car stalled and you were the one who picked up the phone. She didn't say it like an accusation. She said it like someone doing an honest inventory. I'm going to say something and I need you to hear it as a systems person, not an executive, I said. When you defer maintenance on something load-bearing, the failure doesn't come when it's convenient. It comes at the worst possible time and costs most more to fix than the repair would have. Those clinics are load-bearing. She looked at her hands. A company running at a deficit cannot serve a community it no longer exists to serve. A company that clears its debt by removing the thing that justified its existence isn't a company anymore. It's a financial instrument with a logo. Ada coughed in her sleep down the hall. We both listened until it stopped. What would you have me do? Celeste asked. It was a real question, not rhetorical, not a setup. I don't know your full picture, I said, but I know that every repair I've ever been told wasn't in the budget eventually got done. After something broke. I looked at her. You're smart enough to find the money before the break. I've seen you do it. She didn't answer. But she was thinking. I could see it in how she held her coffee mug, not drinking from it, just steadying herself against it. We slept apart, which was the only sensible thing. I gave her the couch with the quilt Eloise's mother had made and slept in the recliner with the small emergency light angled at the wall. The power came back around 4 in the morning. I heard the refrigerator hum on and lay still in the chair and watched the light from outside shift. I woke at 6 to find Ada already standing 2 feet from the couch, staring at Celeste with the patient intensity of a wildlife photographer. Ada. I'm watching her breathe. That's unsettling. Come make eggs. Morning came gray and washed clean. The flooding had pulled back. Roads were passable by 7:30, which was when Celeste's phone found signal again and started delivering the backlog of the night. She read at the kitchen table while Ada insisted on pouring her own orange juice, which ended up mostly in the glass and partly on the table. Celeste mopped up the spill with a paper towel before I could get there. You don't have to. I know, she said it plainly. Ada watched her. You're good at cleaning up. I've had practice. Do you clean up at your work too? Celeste paused. Sometimes. What kind of mess is there? Decisions that didn't go the right direction. Ada thought about this while chewing her toast. Mrs. Pruitt says you make the mess or you clean the mess, but you don't get to pretend nobody made it. I looked at my daughter. Mrs. Pruitt said that? Last week, when I spilled the glitter. Celeste looked at her coffee. Mrs. Pruitt sounds very wise. She's old, Ada said with the frankness of 6. Old people know more, except about rocket ships. After breakfast, I walked Celeste out to the driveway. She had her coat and her bag and her phone, which had not stopped lighting up since signal returned. She looked like someone being pulled in 2 directions hard enough that it almost showed in her shoulders. Garner's going to push the 8% this afternoon, she said. I figured. She looked toward the road. I don't know if I can stop it. I have 2 board members who will follow his lead and a CFO who's running scared. Then don't fight it on numbers, I said. Change what the room is deciding. Make them say out loud what they're actually voting to end. She looked at me. You have something Garner doesn't, I said. You know the places. You know what they do. Make it specific enough that they can't hide behind the language. She was quiet for a moment. You make it sound possible. It's not simple, it's just different from impossible. Ada appeared on the porch in her pajamas and rain boots, Hector under one arm. Celeste, you forgot to say bye to Hector. Celeste walked back up the steps. She shook one small stuffed armadillo paw with complete seriousness. Goodbye, Hector, good luck with the sun mission. Ada pressed a folded piece of paper into Celeste's hand. It was a drawing 3 stick figures outside a house, one with dark hair and what appeared to be a briefcase. Above them, Ada had written in careful, uneven letters, our house. Celeste looked at it for a long moment. You have to keep it, Ada said, so you remember we're real. I looked away, because some moments don't need another adult watching them. The drive to where the car service could reach her took 40 minutes. She rode quiet for most of it. Her phone lit up constantly. She answered one call, her voice shifting back into the register she used in boardrooms, and I drove and let her be who she needed to be. Before she got out, she said, the Ridgemont Clinic, the pharmacist who does medication management for the seniors on fixed incomes. Do you know who that is? Grace Tully, been there 11 years. She does home delivery for 3 patients who can't drive. Celeste opened her notebook. Spell Tully. I did. She wrote it down and kept going. The pediatric walk-in at the Eastview Clinic that caught 2 cases of undiagnosed asthma last spring. The Northgate location serving overnight shift workers from the distribution center who had nowhere else to go at 7 in the morning before other offices opened. She wrote all of it down without editorializing. This doesn't mean I can reverse what's already been approved, she said. I know. I may not win today. I know that too. She looked at me. Then why are you telling me all of this? Because you asked. And because people who talk about patient access numbers should have to picture the patients. Her eyes stayed on mine a second longer than they needed to. Then she opened the door and the morning air came in cold and clean. Keep the jacket, she said. She was wearing my gray fleece over her coat, the one I'd given her the night before when she'd shivered by the door. I'll want it back, I said. I know, she stepped out then paused. Silas. Yeah. Thank you. For all of it. She walked toward the waiting car. I watched until the door closed. The morning moved slow after that. Ada wanted pancakes, so we made pancakes. And I burned the first 2 because I was somewhere else in my head. And Ada said the burned ones tasted like camping, and were therefore the best ones. I texted Pete at work to flag that the bypass flooding might have hit the mechanical room drain lines on Building 2, worth checking when crews were back in. At 12:50 my phone buzzed. Celeste, no greeting, Grace Tully, 11 years, home delivery for 3. Tell me what else she does. I told her. She asked twice more over the next hour. Details I knew from being in those buildings, names, specific situations. Small things that don't show up if you've only ever seen the reports. At 2:17, going in. I was on the back porch with Ada, watching her conduct what she described as Hector's pre-launch inspection, when the next message came at 4:08. Garner wanted a vote to override, didn't get the majority. Clinics stay open. Transition plans go back to committee for community impact review. Not a full win, a pause, but a pause I can use. I read it twice. Ada tugged my sleeve. Is it Celeste? Yeah. Did she clean up the mess? I looked at my daughter. She's working on it. Ada nodded, satisfied. Tell her Hector says good. I typed back, good, keep going, Hector says good. 3 dots, then, tell Hector I owe him one. That evening, I was under the kitchen sink fixing a P-trap that had been slow draining since August when headlights swept across the living room ceiling. Ada saw them from the couch before I'd registered the sound of tires on the driveway. She came back. Don't run, I said. She ran. I came out from under the sink in time to see Celeste on the porch, holding a paper bag in one hand and my gray fleece folded over one arm. She'd changed out of the suit. She looked tired in the way that had nothing to do with sleep. Ada opened the door before I got there. "Did you bring something?" Ada asked immediately. Celeste looked at me with an expression that said she had somehow anticipated this. She lifted the bag. "I stopped at the bakery on 5th. Ada turned to me with the look of a child whose worldview had been confirmed. "She brought something." "I see that. You said she would." "I said maybe." "Same thing." Celeste stepped inside. She held out the fleece. Our hands touched for less than a second. "I washed it," she said. "That was risky." "Why?" "Structural integrity. It's been holding together by habit for 6 years." She almost smiled. "I'll note that for future reference." I made coffee. Celeste sat at the kitchen table, not like a guest this time, not the way she'd sat the first night, perched and uncertain. She sat like someone who'd decided it was all right to take up space. Ada climbed up beside her without asking and opened the bakery bag and began a careful assessment of its contents. "These ones have sprinkles," Ada announced. "Those are for special." "Are you sure?" Celeste said. "Because they were labeled. Special has sprinkles, that's the rule." "I'll update my records." Ada pushed the cookie toward her. "You have to eat the special one. It's for when you did something hard." Celeste looked at the cookie for a moment. Then she picked it up. "All right." They ate at the kitchen table while the coffee brewed, and the last of the day's rain dripped off the gutters in slow intervals. Ada told Celeste 3 things she needed to know about Hector's upcoming sun mission, none of which were scientifically accurate, all of which were delivered with absolute conviction. After Ada went to bed, for real this time, Celeste and I stayed in the kitchen with our cups going cold. "I wasn't certain I'd won until the vote was called," she said. "Garner had the CFO until this last 10 minutes. I'd been building toward a finance argument. When I switched to naming people, I wasn't sure which way the room would go." "What switched you?" She turned the coffee cup. "Ada's drawing." She pulled it from her bag, still folded. "I had it in the folder through the whole meeting. I didn't show it to anyone. It wasn't a strategy." She looked at it. "It was just there, reminding me that someone had already decided I was real enough to draw." I looked at the 3 stick figures, our house. "The clinics aren't saved permanently," she said. "Garner will come back with a restructure proposal that phases them out differently. I have maybe 60 days to build a funding model that makes keeping them viable." She looked up. "I don't know if I can." "I know." "That's not encouraging." "It's not nothing either." I looked at her. "You bought people 60 days of not losing something that matters to them. Real things can happen in 60 days. She was quiet for a while. Outside, the neighbor's cat moved through the yard, which it considered its own regardless of what the fence suggested. "I don't know what I'm doing here," she said. "Not the clinics, here. You're drinking coffee in a house where someone drew you into the family picture. Before she knew your last name," I said. Celeste looked toward the hall where Ada's room was dark and quiet. "She's remarkable. She's 6 and she's already better at reading people than most executives I've met. She gets that from somewhere." "Her mother had it," I said. "I like to think I'm making progress." The silence was comfortable in a way I hadn't expected. Not empty, full, but not pressured. "Eloise," Celeste said quietly. "What was she like?" I told her the real things. The way Eloise could find what was genuinely funny about a bad situation before anyone else got there. The way she kept a running list of books she meant to read that grew faster than she could work through it, and how Ada still sometimes pulled one off the shelf and asked why it had a bookmark in it, and I had to decide what to say. The way our house had been loud and slightly chaotic, and how quiet is something you think you want until you have too much of it. Celeste listened the way she'd listened in the mechanical room. Like the details mattered, like she was actually filing them. "I built distance into everything after my divorce," she said after a while. 8 years ago. I told myself it was efficiency, that I worked better without the noise." She looked at her hands. "I think I just got very good at not being in the room when anything actually happened." "You were in the room last night," I said. "I was stranded." "You stayed." She didn't answer right away. The refrigerator hummed. Ada murmured something in her sleep down the hall, probably correcting Hector on something. "I want to come back," Celeste said, "when it's not an emergency." I looked at her. "Ada's going to expect cookies. I'll bring the ones with sprinkles. She'll negotiate up from there. I'll come prepared. And then, more quietly. She told me to remember you're real. She was talking about herself and you, your house, your family. She looked at the drawing on the table. I don't think she knew she was also talking to me. I reached across and straightened the drawing. 3 stick figures, a lopsided house, a sky Ada had colored in 3 different shades of blue, because she'd said real sky was never just one color. Celeste's hand was near mine on the table. She moved it slightly until her fingers rested over mine. Not a declaration, just there. The weeks after that were not simple. 60 days of hard meetings, of Garner looking for angles, of building a funding partnership with Knox County, and 2 regional nonprofits that Celeste had to negotiate from scratch while defending the arrangement to a board that was still watching her sideways. Some things held. Some didn't, not the way she'd wanted. 2 of the 3 clinics stayed open in full. The 3rd moved to a reduced model with a mobile unit that covered the gap 3 days a week. It wasn't the win she'd wanted. She said that to me directly, and I said that a partial fix was still better than a clean failure. And she said she knew that, but it still sat with her, and I said good, it should. Garner pushed back twice more through legal channels. She held both times by margins that required her to be sharper and better prepared than anyone in those rooms wanted her to be. Some allies fell away. Different ones showed up. The board watched her harder than before, which meant she had to be more careful about what she said and more precise about how she said it. She kept showing up at my house. Not every week, not perfectly. Sometimes she still answered emails at the kitchen table like they were incoming fire, and Ada told her to put the phone away during dinner, which Celeste did. Sometimes she used language at the table that made Ada say, "Talk like a regular person," and Celeste revised herself without making a thing of it. Sometimes I pushed too hard on something and she went quiet for an hour, and then came back and said what she actually meant. She came back. That was the part that mattered. One evening in late November, the 3 of us were on the back porch, watching Ada attempt to teach Hector the correct launch sequence for his sun mission, which had been delayed due to weather and a disagreement about fuel. The yard smelled like fallen leaves and the first edge of cold coming down from the ridge. Celeste had a mug of coffee in both hands and my flannel over her shoulders because the evenings had gotten real. "Do you think she actually believes Hector is going to the sun?" Celeste asked. "I think she believes it the same way she believes everything. Completely, until she decides not to." Celeste watched Ada rearrange Hector's position on the porch rail with great seriousness. "I used to think certainty was a failure of imagination," she said. "Like if you were certain, you hadn't thought hard enough about all the ways you could be wrong. And, now." She looked at me. "Now I think sometimes you just know what you know." Ada turned around. "Hector is ready." "For the sun," I said. "For practice." She held him up toward the sky with both hands, which was apparently the launch position. "He's doing gradual." "Good plan," Celeste said. "Gradual is smart." Ada looked at her. "You can come to the real launch." "When is it?" "When it's time." Ada said it like that settled everything. Then she lowered Hector, tucked him under her arm, and went back inside for a glass of water, leaving the door open behind her. The porch went quiet. Down the street someone was raking the last of the leaves. The sky over the ridge had gone that particular shade of early winter orange that doesn't last long. Celeste leaned her shoulder against mine. Nothing dramatic about it. Just the ordinary weight of someone choosing to be close. That was the part neither of us had expected and both of us needed. Not the crisis that brought her to my door. Not the boardroom where she fought for something worth fighting for. Not even the night we sat in the candlelight while Ada slept between us. It was this. The ordinary weight of it. The gradual,